Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Healing Lyme 2.0 Summit. I'm your host, Dr. Mariah Hinchy, and today we're going to talk about the Lyme toxin trap. So, how mold, metals, and chemicals fuel Lyme and weaken immunity. Here to discuss this with us today is Sinclair Connolly. She is a board certified natural health practitioner and certified toxicity and detox specialist who relies heavily on emerging data in the rapidly evolving field of new health. She is ART trained and has had the privilege of apprenticing with some of the leading edge German functional medicine pioneers. She is also a resonance repatterning practitioner, a PK certified practitioner, a family systems facilitator, and an NLP master practitioner. As a survivor of complex chronic illness and serious trauma herself, she is able to support clients through their health journeys with a deeply shared understanding of and total joy in their triumphs. As a co founder and CEO of Detox Rejuvenation, she also oversees group programs, education development, and lifestyle collections at DRN. Welcome, Sinclair. Tell our listeners a little bit more about how you became involved in the treatment of Lyme disease and vector borne diseases.
The shorter answer is the hard way. It happened to me. My entire practice was about supporting people to resolve trauma that was being held in the tissues. And I thought that was the root cause of all root causes. And I loved my work. I had a very busy practice. And um, then I had to prove and test my own theory. So I ended up in the hospital before my body really had my attention.
Wow.
And I wish I could say that there were some great ahas that happened right after that, but the truth is there weren't. We thought I was having a heart attack. I remember the hospitalists being really excited when they saw me, like, "Ooh, we got a live one. It's not a heart attack, but it acts like a heart attack. What could it be?" And then all the MRIs and scans later, all the labs coming back uninteresting and uneventful. They really resented my questions and started avoiding me, and I was still sitting in the ICU. And I remember walking out of that hospital and not even bothering to fill out any paperwork to discharge because I thought I was going home to die. It's like, well, this won't matter. This is it, because they couldn't help me. So it was a long road from there to discover root cause medicine and terrain theory and understanding how does somebody arrive at chronic illness and how come the allopathic system in all of its magic and glory and newfangled, tools and tricks, how come it can't help? How come there's so many people that are left in this gap? And that became the entire focus for Michael and his practice, my partner, Michael Spandell, and for me. And like we literally had to save ourselves. So that's how we got here.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. So, obviously, you found, as do many, how all of these environmental toxins um, really burden the body and not only make it near impossible to recover from a stealth chronic inflammatory infection like Lyme, but also actually make us more hospitable to their existence and help them not only to evade and survive, but to thrive inside of our bodies.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to say it. That we're actually laying the groundwork for years, if not decades at a time, for Lyme and co-infections and EBV and all these fun long-term energy zappers that degrade our own ability to heal ourselves, because that's what they're really doing. They're not just suppressing your immune system, but also slowing down your own tissue regeneration and impacting your body's ability to self-regulate in literally every system of the body. But how did that happen? We didn't get there overnight. And one of the things that I wish people knew early on was how much control they have over whether or not they're a good host for Lyme and Lyme co-infections. Because
Right.
I thought once I finally got the big Lyme diagnosis, and I have all the infections too. It was
Yeah.
scary because I was being told I was never going to be all the way well, but it was also very affirming because I was finally being told by medical professionals that I wasn't crazy.
Right.
And the the part that I wish I had known early on is that this is not a life sentence or a death sentence.
Right.
and I had to really dig in and discover that piece by piece. And when we say toxins, it sounds like yeah, yeah, I know toxins are bad. Who cares? Like, I'm doing my best, especially like the less energy you have and the lower the function that you have. If your life is literally shrunk to the shape and size of your symptoms, like mine did for so many years, the last thing you want to hear is how, oh my God, I have to do more work now, more research. I need to make more changes. Dude, I can barely get through my day. But the truth is, small shifts in your ongoing exposures may be the cheapest and also the easiest thing you can do to start setting yourself up for a future of success. And then, yes, we need to tackle the backlog in the body. But again, have more control over that than you know.
Right. Yeah, just stop the exposure. Stop putting them in your body. Step 1.
Step one. Yeah. And we'll talk about practical ways to do that today for sure. But I also wish that I'd been told that a little toxins go a long way.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a generation where it's like, oh, the paint fumes, as soon as they're gone, the impact is gone. Oh, the Sharpie, you smell it because you get a little zing off of it. Well, it's actually inflammatory, it's neurotoxic. You're getting high off of it because your body's warning you that this is really bad for you. Oh,
Right.
it's just a little amalgam filling. Oh, it's just a little bit of mold in just one room. All of this adds up. And because they act as interrupters of the body's own self replenishing strategies. So it's not like you aren't already a good detoxer. You are, or you'd be dead. That's the
Right.
truth of it. And I really, a big part of my message is to myth bust what you may have been inadvertently told by well meaning practitioners that gave you a story about yourself that is not empowering, because the more
Right.
sensitive you are, and as we know, us Lyme folks, we tend to flare and crash, and your sensitivities can wax and wane. There are mast cell activation syndrome issues. Lots of this can get layered together so that you have to play a really clean game just to make it through the day.
Yeah.
So, you might get told things inadvertently, like, well, you're not responding well to this, or, oh, we have to go slow, slow with you because you're not a good detoxer. You absolutely are a good detoxer. You have these detox and drainage pathways. They're there, they're built in, or you'd be dead. It's more about reclaiming your body's capacity to excrete, and there are many factors for that, and to catch up on the backlog so that these disruptors can get out of your body faster than they're coming in, and you can reclaim that resilience once more.
Right.
Because the name of the game is just really resilience,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Restoring immune resilience, one of my favorite topics when we're talking about Lyme disease. So before we get into some of these strategies and specifics with detoxification, what are the most common environmental toxins that you see affecting your clients that have tick-borne diseases?
I actually think that we are overlooking air pollution by a significant measure. So it's not just what's out there in the world, like, oh,
Right.
car exhaust. That's what you think of when you think air pollution. At least I
Right.
do because I grew up in LA and California.
Yeah.
But actually, indoor air pollution, so that's mold and mycotoxins, are easily inhaled, especially due to the very, very small particle size. We're talking about zero point 0.2 microns. That makes
Mm,
it through a lot of air filters,
right.
as well as dust and VOCs, like your IKEA cabinets are off gassing. That lovely recycled plastic microfiber rug, you feel like you're doing something good for the planet because you found a way to repurpose your water bottles. You're actually
Mm,
inhaling that.
right.
And so all of this adds up, because your sinuses and these tissues up here are very delicate. And so these toxins, these small toxicant particles, can persist for years, if not decades, in these delicate tissues. And so then you have lesions in the sinuses, in the turbinates, and you have to acknowledge that it's really hard for those to get out mechanically out of the body without a little bit of help.
Right.
Same thing with your lung tissues. So we want to acknowledge that. And of course, I'm in the middle of fires right now,
Mm,
and it a little goes a long way. So we want to have some indoor filtration strategies, and also be really intelligent about what you're bringing into your home. Less is more. We're a part of nature, we are absorbing experts. We are nature. We just took ourselves out of it, but we're still behaving like it. So the light frequencies, the sound, the electronic frequencies that should be coming from the earth, that's Schumann resonance. Instead, we're interrupting our biofield, with these artificial wavelengths from our Wi Fi routers and our smart devices, and also wiring errors in our walls. It's all interrupting us, what we're breathing in, and of course, what we're eating and drinking too. But I
Right.
think we want to remember that we have more control over this than we know. And sometimes the simplest thing you can do is just open your windows because it's a
Right.
whole lot less toxic out there than it is in here.
Yep. And especially in the winter. So I know you are in lovely San Diego. But for me, like Connecticut, 6 degrees this morning. Everything is like buttoned up, locked up, fires going, heat's on. And it's been like this for a good week. So yeah, there's no opening doors or windows, but
Yeah.
there should be, And for people that
Yeah.
are living in an environment like that, I think it's important to like pick a day of the week, open the doors and the windows at least for a few minutes, turn the fans on and just kind of like recycle that air a little bit.
Yeah, it's a great point. When I was sick, we were living in the Pacific Northwest in the mountains in Oregon. And um, it was a beautiful craftsman, but it was basically like a very pretty cardboard box in terms of the
Mm.
amount of insulation. So what we did was we put one of those really cheap sealant bars under the door, like the foam rollers
Yeah.
you get on Amazon or a hardware store, to the
Yeah.
bedroom door, and we would open the bedroom windows all day long. And then the second we got home from work, we would close the windows and start putting a space heater in there to get it back to where it was, but at least it was what we could do within our budget
Right.
to give ourselves some fresh air while we slept.
Yeah,
We didn't
that's a good
have the
idea.
money to switch out to organic cotton or organic linen sheets. We didn't have the money to switch out our crummy old mattress to a
Right.
beautiful organic non-toxic one, but at least we could do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about air pollution. We've talked
Yeah.
about electromagnetic frequency pollution,
Mhm.
electronics. You touched on a little bit about food and water, drink, things like that. Any other toxins that you think our listeners should be aware of?
Yeah, let's slow down and unpack that a little bit further. So, EMFs are really interesting because we are sensitive to frequencies and we want to be getting an excess of ions, negative ions, to be actually breathing and healing and all that stuff. But that happens out in nature. We're actually getting depleted, and our own electrical signal is getting pulled off of us by the electronics around us. So, the laptop I have in front of me is as far away as I can get it and get as low a reading as possible from my body voltage meter so that I don't fatigue myself through the day.
Right.
And I've already, like, the meters will tell the story. So there's different kinds of EMFs that disrupt the body in different ways. But the punchline is all the different kinds of EMFs. So that's RF coming from your smart devices or this excess of voltage that is interacting with your body. All these different kinds, dirty electricity, right, is another one. um, they are creating oxidative stress in the body. And so there's very interesting, very delicate chemistry in which this happens at the cellular level. But the upshot is you're more inflamed at the cellular level by being around these electronics and being in this wired environment. So, less is more. Distance is your friend. You could start with that. Don't put your laptop or your iPad on your belly anymore. That's a big no no. Not just
Mhm.
for the RF that's coming at you, so the Bluetooth and the cellular data and the Wi Fi signals, because they are always broadcasting at you, even if you're not using the device. That signal is actually peaking because your apps are updating. You're not in control of how strong the signal is based on your personal usage. The machine is in control of that with the network. So that can be happening outside of your awareness, fatiguing you and adding to your oxidative stress. It can also, some studies have shown that you can have as much as a 10x in your histamine levels in the body from different EMF exposures and stressors that are happening every day around you in your home. That matters a lot when you're trying to make progress on resolving your Lyme and co-infections. So instead of just saying, hey, how can we carpet bomb these bad guys that are in the body, we need to ask, why were they allowed to thrive? And what do I have control over?
Right.
So before you get stressed and say, oh my God, Sinclair, you're really annoying me. This sounds like a lot of work. And I need my tech and my crutches. I need my Alexa. I need to be able to tell Alexa to turn off the lights because I don't have enough energy to get up and turn the lights off myself. Well, you don't have enough energy to get up and turn the lights off yourself because you've created an environment that is literally stealing your energy, and your Lyme and co infections are having a party because of it.
Right.
So there's a little bit of a balance to be had here. Every little bit of reduction you can make means less pills for you and you heal faster. You literally can regenerate your tissue faster in a low EMF environment than you can in a high EMF environment. So if you were going to just focus on one thing, you would focus on your sleep area because you don't need all that junk while you're sleeping. Even people with a CPAP machine, you can take all the stuff that's unnecessary away from you in the bedroom. What I found is that the sicker people are, the more your bed looks like a tech station with the power strips, and all the
Hmm.
charging devices and all the tech and gear and maybe some biohacking stuff. And actually, you could be adding to your body stress by just having that all that plugged in around you while you
Right.
sleep. So distance is your friend, especially while you sleep because you're much more vulnerable. You're supposed to be doing the bulk of your repair, detox, and drainage while you're sleeping. So let's start there, you know?
Yeah.
And if you
It's a
have a
really
sleep
good
number bed,
suggestion.
for the love of God, like please unplug that thing.
Yeah.
Because so many people have come to our clinic and our practice saying, "Oh, I'm unfixable. I've seen every functional medicine celebrity." And I go, "Cool. What's your body voltage in bed at night?" And they don't know. And that's a measurement that we need to have. So
So
it's
tell our
it's
listeners, how do they find that out? What device do you get? Where do you get it? How do they test it?
Yeah. So you can get something that's called a body voltage kit. You can actually put this together yourself at Home Depot with the different components if you or your partner is handy. That doesn't sound fun to people who are chronically ill because we don't need one more project. So they've changed their name a couple times. Live EMF Safe is a great place to get it. And I think
Okay.
if you use my name, you can still get a discount from them. I think it's like 10% off or something. So try that, see if it works, because we've helped them out a lot. They're great. And what you do is you turn it to the V. There's different settings, and you hold up the little wand, plug it into a grounded outlet, and you lay down in your bed as if you are in your sleeping position because we want to know how far away your head is from the wall. How high is your body voltage? Because for me, living in that lovely Craftsman, so pretty, but the wiring was a mess on the
Yeah.
inside. And new buildings aren't necessarily much better because it's really easy to create wiring errors at every outlet junction box. There's just like, if you twist the wires wrong, suddenly you're creating this huge surge in the magnetic field around you, along with whatever's traveling along the wires. And electricity is looking for a grounding rod.
Right.
And in absence of anywhere else, you become the grounding rod. So you want to know, what is that number? I was sleeping in 6 to 7 volts at night, and building biologists, those darling German scientists, we love them so much because they're such nerds about the health and quality of a home. They say anything over 1 volt is catastrophic to your health.
Wow.
That's where you see chronic illness set in, cancers, things like that. So we actually ideally want to be under 100 millivolts, which is a tenth of that,
Yeah.
or even 10 millivolts while we're sleeping would be ideal. Otherwise, we start getting biological impacts. So this isn't just about, yeah, my phone is bad. I know that, Sinclair. I already turned on airplane mode. This is, you know, I mean, I can just hear it right now because I remember what I felt like, listening to people like, just bottom line it for me and tell me what to do. I remember
So
how
this
that
is
feels.
even for the people who are like turning everything off at night. Maybe they have that timer like we do where, everything's plugged into
Yeah.
it. This is beyond that. We're talking about the like just the house electricity in your walls
Yes, the
could
AC
be
magnetic
creating.
fields that
Yes.
emanate from your wiring.
Yep.
And the more metal you have around your body and the more electronics you have around your body, the greater the reason there is for your body to interact with these magnetic fields and raise your body voltage. And what is that doing? It's suppressing your immune system so parasites, Lyme and co-infections can have a party.
Yep.
It's increasing your histamine load, so it's harder for you to self-regulate on a number of levels. And
Mhm.
it's also slowing down blood flow because this is so inflammatory and just creating oxidative stress body wide. And that's just a few of the mechanisms of damage. So
Right.
these are things that you can tackle in your own time, just one at a time. And stuff is free. Unplug it, pull it away from your body.
Right.
And then you will be amazed at how much more energy you have over time to do the small things like the correct supplement protocol for you, the correct food for you, given, your sensitivities that you've developed. Because the tricky thing about Lyme and co-infections is there isn't just one diet, is there?
Right.
That everybody thrives on. There's some bio-individual factors. When you look at food sensitivity, some people are histamine sensitive, some people develop oxalate sensitivity because they have a mold exposure as well, that can really push with that fungal overload, that increased sensitivity to high oxalate foods. So it's just a couple of factors to be thinking about and what you have control over to make sure that the protocol you're getting from your trusted practitioner is actually working hard for you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make any sense if you're not doing the foundational groundwork and a lot of these things that are free to spend, the hundreds or thousands of dollars on these other protocols that, you're not going to respond well to.
Yeah. And there's no way I could have done this
Yeah.
just to be real, like I couldn't read an email or write a sentence for years at a time when Lyme was at its worst for me. I had to have a buddy. In my case, it was my partner, Michael Spendell,
Yeah.
and he was the one doing the testing, and I just sat there and I held the BVK,
Yeah.
the kit, and he was taking the measurements and all that. So get a buddy that's
Yeah.
willing to do this with you.
Yeah, having support is so important. Having a community, not a caretaker, but like someone who's there for you that when you're in crisis you can call and they can help you is so important.
It's so true. And this is like one of the most favorite topics in my forum with folks because they walk each other through it,
Yeah.
So there's always a place you can go for support.
Yeah. It's funny too. You just made me think like I think a lot of Lyme patients, and I know when I was sick, like you feel so helpless. You feel like you're not contributing to anything. So
Yeah.
to be able to, to feel like with the support group and whatnot and helping each other out, just to be able to feel like you did something impactful or important for somebody else actually changes your whole like biochemistry and physiology and can
Mm.
actually contribute more like to your healing and well-being. So, um
I love that. That is such a gorgeous way to say that.
yeah. So we didn't talk yet about heavy metals or
Mhm.
glyphosate. So touch a little bit on those two and how they negatively impact the immune system.
Yeah, it's a great question. So often there's a synergy between, organophosphates, which that's what glyphosate is. It's a class of toxins that are industrial chemicals. They're man-made and they get put on our food as herbicides and pesticides. Glyphosate is one of those amazing
Mm.
substances because there's over 3.5 billion pounds of it used worldwide annually. So, like, it's out there. And because it's water soluble, it's now in the hydration cycle itself of the planet. And it's very good at disrupting your body. It's good at creating leaky gut on contact, but it's also good at literally turning the lights out in your cells so that they cannot talk to each other with the same signals, the electrical and light signals that they send to each other with the same efficiency. It's like the lights go out at the cellular level. You can see this on electrographs and these different scans that you can do now. So you're getting exposed in micro amounts against your will to things like organophosphates, including and especially glyphosate. So it is helpful to know that that's the backdrop against which you're trying to work and heal. So if you're like, I'm so sensitive to foods that everybody else can tolerate, I'm so sensitive to these supplements, one of the things that you may want to do is actually do some glyphosate cleanup in the body and account for that because glyphosate is not difficult to detox, but you got to acknowledge that it's there because it won't come out enough on its own. You'll see some excretion in your pee. It's easy to measure.
Yeah.
There are a number of labs that include it as a marker. Mosaic is one where you could test for it just by itself, but that's
Mm.
not very cost effective. I like using the Total Tox bundle from Vibrant because it is included in there, among
Right.
like dozens and dozens of other industrial chemicals. Um, so we want to understand that because glyphosate cannot just literally kill off the important keystone species in the gut that you need to digest your proteins because they interfere with those that enzyme production, but it's also creating that gut lining leak. And
Right.
that means that your immune system is much more prone to go ready, fire, aim, ready, fire, aim, ready, fire, aim, because all those exquisite rules about what was allowed from your gut into the rest of your body have now been disregarded. And food particles, toxin particles, and yes, your gut microbiome species, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, are now leaking into other spots. And guess what? Your gut lining is has the same rules and the basic format of many of your other organ linings. So leaky gut means leaky liver, leaky kidneys, leaky vessels and veins. We need to consider that. And it's one of the reasons why we are more sensitive now than we were a couple of decades ago. Like we're the sensitive generations. And that shows up
Right.
differently depending on your age and your exposures, right? But it is very fixable. So if you're willing to fold in some humics and fulvics into your protocol, there are a number of good materials on the market for that are really good at mopping up glyphosate in the gut on an ongoing basis. And then you can also start using some of the bioactive carbons that will, actually go past the gut lining and start going deeper into the tissues. And you can add things in like glycine, which is what glyphosate mimics, so
Hmm.
that you can actually get that back into the joints. Because for Lyme folks, this is a major concern. Not for all of us, but for some of us.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, how come my tendons tear, my joints are brittle, how come I get so many non-contact injuries? Well, because glyphosate is actually destroying that bounce that you used to have in the collagen, the ligaments, all these important places in the gut because it creates brittle tissues instead of gorgeous, supple bounce in there.
Right.
So easy to do though, because glycine's easy to take. Humics and
Hmm.
fulvics are easy to take. They're easy to fold in, even a little bit at a time, so that you can mop those up and become more effective at the rest of your protocol. So we want to be thinking holistically about what have I been exposed to that I didn't have a choice about. All of us have been exposed to glyphosate. It's in over 70% of our air and water samples. Why does that matter to you? Because it's a patented antibiotic and it is a mineral chelator of the plants that you're supposed to be ingesting to get those beautiful bioavailable minerals that can create some lovely resilience for you. It's not just about the cancers that develop with glyphosate exposure. It's also about what's happening all along the way first. And that makes you more susceptible to things like Lyme and co-infections. So we want to understand that because I could go on and on about glyphosate, man. Like I nerd out about this stuff. But the most important thing I want you to hear is yes, you've been exposed to it. Yes, it's impacting you. Yes, it makes the detox of the other toxins harder and slower for your body. But it's also super fixable, even on a limited budget.
Yep. And as we said earlier, avoidance, right? So,
Yes.
yes, hard to avoid it in the air. Some people might argue it's hard to avoid it in their water, but we can always get water filters that are, effective in removing glyphosate.
Mhm.
But, if you are eating a lot of grains that have been sprayed with glyphosate, right? Just avoiding those. We're not even saying go and pay for organic or pay, for non-GMO. Just avoid the grains because most of what you're making from grains aren't healthy for us anyways.
Way to point that out. Thank you. We should definitely highlight that part.
But that's just my 2 cents. So
Yeah.
you mentioned total toxic burden when you were talking about Mosaic, right? And some of
Hmm.
their testing for toxicity.
Hmm.
Tell our listeners who aren't familiar, what does that mean? Like, what is someone's total toxic burden? And how does having a higher burden make it harder for you to recover from Lyme and other co-infections?
So here's how I think about it. There's, over 100,000 registered chemicals, but actually chemicals interact with each other to create secondary and tertiary interactions. And so there's actually hundreds and hundreds of thousands of chemical compounds out there that you're getting exposed to on a daily basis. And each one of them actually has a different mechanism of action that harms the body, depending on the molecular construction of that particle and how that interacts with the different systems in the body. So I think about man made chemicals in one bucket, And I think about mycotoxins developed by mold, because mycotoxins are the poisons that molds make to help elbow other beneficial organisms out of the way so that the mold can win, because mold is a colonizer. And heavy metals, and EMFs. Those are like some of the major toxin buckets. So we've already covered EMFs. We've kind of touched on molds, but you can actually measure your toxic burden and some of the most popular chemicals, the most prevalent molds, and some of the widest exposure heavy metals from a simple urine test at home. No test is perfect. But we do something we call it the healing lab, where we run these tox panels and then we give you an individualized protocol taking into account your different conditions and symptoms and your health history to help slowly flush out these different types of toxins, taking into account all their different mechanisms of distress that they generate. So that dealing with Lyme and resolving Lyme and co-infection suddenly becomes a much smaller problem when your terrain is cleaned up, when your immune system has gone from total freak out and crazy imbalance across, your different responses, that suddenly, okay, it's a little less bad, like the teeter totter is a little less wonky. You're draining and excreting a little bit faster. You're able to actually reduce that oxidative stress dramatically and get cellular function back up. Your mitochondria have gone from like total shutdown cell danger response mode, because mitochondria don't like toxins either, to, oh,
Right.
okay, I can make ATP again. I can get more efficient. And then you can really work with your practitioner to, yeah, flush out those infections at a pace that's really tolerable for you. So, Total Tox Bundle from Vibrant America is a great starting point because it's so accessible and you can do the test at home. My favorite way to measure heavy metals is the oligoscan, but there's very few in the United States, so you'd have to go into a clinic that has one,
Mhm.
because that
And do you
measures
have one
storage,
at
not
your
excretion.
clinic?
Yeah, we do.
You
Yeah,
do. Great.
it's super fun.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about how all of these environmental toxins that we're talking about actually play a role in the creation of biofilm for a lot of these stealth organisms, and what can we do about that?
So think about biofilm as an infection that's stronger than you. Because you would have to use like 5,000 times the strength of antibiotics that would kill you in order to kill the biofilm. So we actually will win with biofilm faster if we look at dissolving strategies and cleaning up the terrain that allows biofilm to thrive. So, um, biofilms are pathogenic in nature. They're really good at stealing energy from you, and and they're like films that colonize, and there can be up to 95% genetic diversity within a colony. It's just one biofilm colony. You
Yeah.
have healthy biofilms, just like you have healthy gut bacteria that need to be there to line the organs they have their own synergistic roles to play. And then you have pathogenic biofilms. So we're focusing on pathogenic biofilms, the ones that are blooming because your stream is dirty, basically. Because a moving stream runs clean. And then if you throw all this junk in and slow down the flow of your body's own tissue regeneration and excretion, you're going to get these biofilms blooming. And they are so good at modulating, they will always win unless you clean up the terrain. So, like, they have strategies to actually grab at your white blood cells as your white blood cells go by and actually like sequester them. And actually larger pathogens, like the big gut worms, the fun ones that you see on the internet because they're scary to look at.
Mhm.
I wish Lyme was more fun to look at. If we could see it from a parasite cleanse in a toilet, I feel like we would have solved this much faster for folks.
Right.
But these larger worms have a synergy with biofilms, and they actually use them as their nests to hide from the immune system, essentially. So they bloom in a toxic, stagnant environment. How is it toxic and stagnant? Well, the more exposure you have to toxins, if your body isn't able to quickly excrete them, they go into storage. And that slows down your liver because you keep having intrahepatic toxin recirculation, basically. So your liver tries to clean them out from the blood, sends them out through the bile, and then they get reabsorbed in the gut lining and they go back into the bloodstream. And your body hates that. So because it's so inflammatory. So your body tries to sequester toxins that aren't easily excreted quickly into the adipose tissues. That's why so many toxins are classified as obesogens
Mm.
because one of your body's strategies is actually to pack on more adipose, like more fat tissue, expand that because it's trying to save your life and keep the toxins away from your vital organs. But some, like lead, go into storage in the bones. You don't have a choice. So different toxins have different electrical charges and different chemical properties that determine where they get stored in the body. And that's where biofilms bloom. Like women get a lot of biofilms in the side tissues of their breast because this is often like a holding tank for toxins. Yes, toxins that you got, through that. Remember, all the really bad deodorants that we used back in junior high and high school. We didn't know any better.
Right.
Yes, we absorbed those, but it's also, what your brain tried to flush out through your lymphatics at night and then it got stuck in the lymphatics. Oops, we weren't able to drain efficiently enough. What happens? Biofilms start to take over because, ooh, it's just moving a little slower over here. The immune system is a little bit weakened around this higher concentration of toxins. Awesome. I'll move in. I'll start running the show in this tissue. And then it's something that you have to bust through and overcome. But there's an art to that for people with Lyme and co-infections. So we like to support drainage first and get some binders on board that you can tolerate and mitochondrial support before we start adding in things like systemic enzymes like Bolucki is phenomenal for cleaning up the tissues, and that's natural. And then we can rotate into some harsher biofilm cleanup. Does
That's
that
great.
help?
Yes,
I know that we're probably
absolutely.
over time, but I wanted to.
No, no, we're good. We've got a few minutes left. No, that's super helpful, and I think you did a really good job of kind of like depicting, how it all works together. So, in the little bit of time that we have left, give us kind of like the big picture. So, how do you tackle what are your strategies for helping to lower the toxic load while dealing with these infections?
Yeah,
How
it's a
do you
great
do it all
question.
together?
Yeah. Well, let's assume that we're working with somebody sensitive, right?
Okay.
Because that is sort of one of the defining characteristics of Lyme and co-infection folks. Because we have an energy production issue, we have, a terrain issue, like we can't keep up as easily, and we also have that immune suppression, immune dysregulation issue. So we have like multiple tiers here. So we develop what we call the capacity algorithm. So we start by adding in ATP production support. So that's how do we help the mitochondria when you may have been malnourished for quite some time? Because anytime Lyme and co-infections are allowed to thrive, we have to acknowledge that, yeah, our gut's probably a little bit dysregulated. And with the food supply chain the way it has been for the last couple of decades, I would assume that you're malnourished, even if you're overweight. That doesn't mean you're not malnourished.
Right.
So let's support with some bioavailable, micronutrients for the mitochondria. I love like these pre-digested ancient minerals for that. There's a few of them out there that work. I also want to add in some, essential aminos so that we can start doing some gut repair lining and have some basic building blocks of life back in the body because we assume that your ability to absorb and use nutrients is compromised. So we want to support that ATP production and get the mitochondria back into production mode. And a big part of that is nervous system retraining. So it doesn't help to throw the whole book of detox at the body if you cannot get into a parasympathetic dominant state. And that is not as complicated as people are making it sound. And I hate to be a little feisty on here. Actually, I don't. Who am I kidding? I'm fine with being feisty. I want you to heal as fast as possible. So we don't have to make a big meal out of nervous system retraining. We don't have to pathologize the nervous system and give ourselves even more labels. Your
Mhm.
nervous system is responding perfectly under the stressors that it's experiencing. It doesn't make mistakes. So just consider that. And just anybody who's telling you that you're fragile and that it's hard to retrain the nervous system, keep looking. So we want to retrain the body to get back into the parasympathetic dominant state a little bit more often, stay a little bit longer, increase that safety, because that's where we rest, digest, heal, and detox. And that's where all of the good tools and all the good choices you're making can go to work. But it really is like rebuilding a muscle. It's about getting into the healing state as often as possible throughout the day, lowering the stakes, and trying to stay a little bit longer, you know? So you're as you're rebuilding that muscle, then you can start adding in drainage support. I love drainage support. It sounds so gross, drainage, ew. But it really is like the name of the game for Lyme and co-infections people. We got to be pooping every day. You got to empower the liver, the kidneys, the lymphatics to flush out that which has no longer wanted or what should never have been put in the first place, which includes toxins and metabolic waste, of course, um, and then you can start adding in like active detox elements, like the right binders for the toxins you've been exposed to that interrupted your body's own ability to heal. And also things that can actually mobilize those toxins out with safety and efficacy. There's a bunch of crap on the market. Please
Right.
take your time, research, choose your guides with care. If somebody's promising quick fixes, run because we
Run.
want to work with the body's own strategies. That's stuff. That's who we inherit. So just save your money. And then, of course, we can get into, we want to consider like what we call food filters, like we mentioned earlier. People develop food sensitivities and reactions as a normal course of when your immune system gets dysregulated and suppressed. So that can look different for different people. Might surprise you. But we want to take a conscious pause from foods that are inflammatory for you. Otherwise, you're poking the bruise you're trying to heal.
Right.
And that takes too long and it costs unnecessary energy and resources. Um, and then, of course, the last elements of the capacity algorithm are environmental mitigation. So if you're not poisoning yourself, you sure do heal a whole lot faster. We want more toxins going out every day than are coming in. That's just math. So
Yeah.
you'd be amazed at how solvable little steps can be along the way for that, you
Right.
know.
And I think a lot of it goes back to education. I think a lot of patients would be more than willing to do this if they were being told. So
Yeah,
I think
I
this is
agree.
super helpful.
Well, and I think that we want to refrain from being judgmental or
Yeah.
admonishing or trying to shame people into action
Yeah.
because as you and I both know from having suffered through real disease, a real Lyme experience and then recovering, energy is very, very precious. There's very little of it to survive the day. So we want to make this as easy as possible and we want to build on that momentum. So shaming people into like switching out plastic to glass, you're not going to feel better overnight when you do it, but it sure does make your journey go faster.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think you catch more flies with honey.
Yeah, absolutely. And trying to coordinate all of these tips and tricks together at the same time, because I've
Yeah.
had a lot of patients that come to me where it's like, you go, well, I tried detoxing. I tried fixing my immune system. I tried healing my gut. And it's like, unfortunately, we are so interconnected, right? As opposed to the way modern medicine looks at the human body. Every cell impacts every other cell, impacts every other system. And we have to figure out an affordable, easy logistical way to combine all of these various approaches together because it's like when you have that synergism, right? You can't detox without healing the gut. You can't heal the
Yeah.
gut without detoxing. You can't, it's like everything is like this big ball of wax and you kind of have to tackle it all together using, you know, a somewhat simplistic but effective strategy.
I think that's beautifully said. I mean, we have a somebody who's now flare free, who was having like unlivable Lyme flares just a few months ago, just 4 months ago, and he came in with like all the markers you don't want to see on a tox
Mhm.
bundle. A lot of radioactive elements, a lot of the crazier, heavier chemicals. several different mycotoxins, and he, like clockwork in his custody battle, if it got stressful enough, he would be down for the count for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
He'd have the big, eye and ocular and sinus flares. He wouldn't be able to breathe. He'd have to lay in a dark room, so
Yeah.
inflamed he couldn't eat, couldn't think. And now he's still going through that battle, but he has so much more resilience, and it's been almost 2 months since he's had a flare like that. So it's not like this happens overnight, but as you lower the toxin burden, so you're literally like, if this was a bucket, everybody uses a bucket metaphor with toxins,
Hmm.
right? And what we're playing with, and we spend too much time, and even in functional medicine, is like the overflow. Oh my God, we're overflowing, and now we're flaring, and then you bring it down just enough, and this is all the drama and all the protocols just about managing. Am I going to overflow or not today? If you
Right.
actually do the work to systematically reduce your toxin load, a lot can go wrong in your life,
Right. And
and
you
you don't
don't
have to
overflow.
flare. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hope here. You don't
Oh,
have to
there
be
is.
perfect. I wasn't. So,
Yeah. Same. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
welcome.
Do you have any other tips or tricks or advice that you'd like to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
I do, and it's not pretty.
Oh boy.
If I could teach you how to do one thing that wasn't a supplement, um, it would be how to do a proper coffee enema. So you will have to take far less pills. Just clinically, that's what we see. People
Mhm.
heal faster and the reactions smooth out if you're willing to do them on a regular basis, even once a week. But the prep matters, the coffee matters, the bucket matters. And yes, there are nervous system tips and tricks so this doesn't stress you out. So if you're willing, it's something to explore.
Do you have a resource for that? Do you have a
Oh,
video, a
yeah.
training, an ebook,
Yeah, we have a free
anything?
guide. That's a great point.
Okay.
Duh. Yeah, I'm happy to give that to all of your listeners. Yeah, of course.
Wonderful. So
Yeah.
tell our listeners, first of all, are you taking clients?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So if anyone wants to become a client of yours or
Mhm.
wants more information on coffee enemas or anything that you do, how would they reach you?
You can go to detoxnation.com, and that's where you'll find the coffee and a PDF. Of course, we'll give it to you guys for this event as well. And
Okay.
that's also where you can talk to my team about if you're a fit for our practice and learn
Okay.
more about our clinic, which is in Carlsbad, San Diego area. And also where you can, we've got a podcast and we hang out on Instagram. We'd love to, see you and support you there too.
Okay. Wonderful. Any upcoming events that you'd like to share?
Oh, that's a great question. We do a couple of times a year. These really, I think they're fun. Liver cleanses. We call it rapid liver reset, where you get to choose your own adventure and your own intensity for the
Okay.
cleanse and the flush. So that's fun. And we do the same thing with parasite cleansing. It's choose your own intensity.
All
So
right. Great. And they can find more information on this through your website as well.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
There's wait
Awesome.
lists there.
Sinclair, so nice to meet you. Thank you for
I
joining
gotcha.
me.
I really appreciate your advocacy in this space,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I'm so glad you're doing this work.
Thank you. It's what I love to do, sincerely. All right. So, for all of you listening from home, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Healing Lyme Summit. And we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.